That's a bit fun. Yeah. I've always got to laugh at all the people that come from England, and when you mention us, even on Facebook, you used to get them. Not so much now. They'll stay quiet these days on Facebook. Uh, when you mention this, yeah, the good old English, huh? Jesus. Yeah, so it shouldn't be of any great surprise today to see that the Prime Minister uh, supporting Israel on their endeavours with the Palestinian people in Gaza. Let's say because of England's past, clearly. Also, it's not often you hear this one, but you do now and again. You get the odd English person who proclaim they're Romans. Yeah, they like to proclaim that, but they know they're not. They know they got their arses kicked by the Romans. They know they were colonised by the Romans. That's exactly what they were, colonised. That's where London came from, don't forget. Yeah, yeah, so what did they do? They made lemonade out of the lemons, being London. The colonisers' military fort. After the colonisers went away, they used it as a settlement, never did they moved in there. And that's how London is what it is today. It wasn't because they were all Romans and they all built London. Don't talk bollocks. The Romans made London, not the English. Yeah. So, all the biggest, obviously, the biggest colonisers were the English, actually, after the Romans. The most violent were the English, amongst the French. But the English comes number one every time. Doesn't matter where you look at this, it's always the same, because it's true. I mean, the Red Indians alone, you're talking about 100 million Red Indians got slaughtered, Yeah. And then you get the Aborigines. I don't know how many of them got slaughtered. But I've never actually looked at that one to find out how many Aborigines got slaughtered. To be honest, it'll be a lot likely. I don't think it'd be as many as the Red Indians, 100 million Red Indians, though, And yet people seem surprised. Maybe because they've never looked at history. You don't get taught things like that in school. Of course you don't. They're not going to teach you that they were evil, bad bastards way back in the old days in primary school, are they? Or in high school? Of course not. No country's going to do that. There isn't any country that's going to do that. But you shouldn't be. You should not be surprised, and you should not be surprised either about the EU backing it either, backing what's going on over in Gaza, because they were just as much colonisers as the English were. I mean, Jesus, you only have the most perfect example out of that is the French, and then you get the Dutch. Oh yeah, the Dutch. You should look at that one. You should Google that one. Where the Dutch colonisers? Question mark. Click search on Google. Yeah, they were big colonisers. They were just as murderous as the British and the French were. Not to mention Argentinians. The Argentinians too, yeah, of course. If you Google all these countries, just pick countries at random over the EU, over even Eastern Europe. Just type them in. Where's this country? Where this country colonisers? Question mark. Well, either be yeah or nay. And yeah, most of them were the English specifically. I do say I don't call it the UK because there wasn't any UK going that far back. The very beginnings of English colonisation. What the hell? There was no British then. It started off with the white flag with the red bloody cross on it. Yeah, the Union Jack came later. What's the whole basis of a Union Jack? I'm going to say again is my Scottish St Andrews flag. And the shade of blue, for any English that seem to think, oh, that's royal blue. That's English royal blue. No, it's not. Go fuck yourselves. No, it's not. That's the blue. Actually looks lighter here. It's actually darker than that. Ah, you can see it there. You can see it roughly a bit there, just there. That's the shade of blue. That dark blue in the background there. Fucking get around, you piece of shit. That's it actually looks lighter when you do that, but it's actually darker than that. And it's a little bit darker there. But there you go. That's the shade of blue that a Union Jack is. And that is the shade of blue this flag is. When the light's not bouncing off it, that is from my yellow curtains. Yellow curtains. So that's the basis. Without that, you don't have a Union Jack. Union Jack. It's impossible to have a Union Jack without that flag, and without that, obviously, that shade of blue is my country's blue, not England's blue. England can scream it about that all they like. They're idiots if they believe that that's English royal blue. It's not. Never was. And I would never ever use one of those flags which are sky blue, because that is not St Andrew's flag. That is not what the Scottish call a saltire. Is it hell? That's a saltire, what I just showed you. So, without the Scottish agreement with London, there wouldn't have been a Union Jack in the first place. Anyway, nobody would even have thought of it. And yeah, they did destroy their English flag in order to create the Union Jack. An English flag, the red cross on it, it wasn't just a perfect red cross with a line coming down the centre of it. I can't remember, it was either to the left, slightly to the left hand side, or slightly to the right hand side. I can't remember. Because there's two flags in the world like that. There's another one, can't remember which country, it's a European country. It's got the white flag with the red cross. Only theirs is to one side, and the English cross was to the other side. I can't remember which one it was, which doesn't matter anyway. Yeah, my flag just fell over because it's too bloody light. The police came in there and knocked it over. So the English, yeah, everything has been English driven. Everything is English driven. Why we ever made an agreement like that hundreds of years ago? A lot of Scottish greedy people wanting their little pieces of silver, gold actually in those days. Yeah, that's why that was signed. That's the only reason that agreement was signed. Or it would never have been signed in the first place, and we'd probably still be at war with each other today. Probably. which wouldn't be a bad thing, because England doesn't have a clue on how to run Britain in the first place. That's why they colonised so many places. What else was England to do? They don't have any natural resources like Scotland's got, or like Russia's got. Even America's got some oil. Not the English, oh no, they've only got coal and slates, and that is it. They don't have anything else. So what were they to do? Use their initiative, maybe? Use some brain power? No. Instead, they decided to go tipsing all over Africa and, conquer other countries and all the rest of it. Not just Africa, obviously, but, you got Australia, America, Canada. And there was quite a few other countries. I mean, Jesus, 1/3 of the world was controlled by England at one time. And all these decisions are all made by the English government and that English Parliament. Anybody worth their salt, a proper, decent person becoming a Prime Minister over there would actually set out laws, guillotine decisions on laws, because nobody would ever agree to them. So you'd have to do a guillotine decision on it to bring down that Parliament, knock it down, get rid of it. Too many bad decisions and too many lives were cost through that Parliament, through the made in that Parliament. Best thing to do is knock it down and start from scratch. Yeah. Regardless of what any English person thinks, no one cares. The English would think like that. Oh, you can't do that. That's our Parliament. That's our Parliament. Nobody gives a fuck about it. You know what I mean? I mean, nobody in the world cares about the English Parliament, and that's why too many bad decisions were made. I mean, that's why they shout out. It's always the same, isn't it? The Germans, the Germans, the Germans, the Germans, the Jews, the Jews, the Germans, the Jews. Ah, Zionism's got a lot to do with that as well. With them shouting out the same old rubbish all the time. And it is. I mean, in Germany, not just in Germany, but in what's called Ukraine today, well, there were some Jews murdered, yes. Not just by the Germans, but by what's called the Ukrainians today. They were only called Russians in those days. Yeah, because it was just Russia. These days it's Ukraine. All the Russian Jews were all moved over to what's called Ukraine today, and because the Russians didn't want them scattered all over Russia. And there was tons of different laws in Russia made against Jewish people. And yet the Jewish people, they kept getting thrown out by different by different kings and queens of Russia over hundreds and hundreds of years. And yet for some stupid reason they kept going back. I don't know why. I mean, if that was me and I get kicked out of a country because of my race or whatever, I would say, oh, fuck you. Stick your country up your arse, you know what I mean? That's the way normal people, the Jews didn't think that way. They kept going back. And they kept getting kicked back out, they kept going back, and they kept getting kicked back out. And a lot of them ended up moving out to Germany because Germany was the only safe place for Jewish people to be since the 1400s, probably since before that, but Jews only started going to Germany in the 1400s under the reign of the Franks, which was the very last German royal family, which the Germans themselves killed off, like everybody else did, including the Conservatives, the Conservative Party. Yeah. You got Oliver Cromwell, Lord Oliver Cromwell to murder the real royal family, the English royal family, way back in those days. And then they utilised two families from Germany and stuck them together to make a fake royal family. That's the one you've got today. You get so many English racists that actually believe that that's the English royal family. No, it's not. No, it's not. They don't have any. You've even got TikTok videos on TikTok that actually proclaim that the Queen Elizabeth, when she was alive, had a lot of powers over the government, and she had the power to sack a government and all this. No, she didn't. The king doesn't have any powers to do that either. Of course they don't. They've got to do as they're told. And that was the whole point obviously, of creating a fake royal family. Once the real royal family were bumped off by Lord Oliver Cromwell. You should Google that one. Just type into Google Lord Oliver Cromwell murdered the royal family, the English royal family. Click search, and I can guarantee you'll get tons of stuff come up about it. And not just on shitty little websites that don't mean anything to anybody, made up by idiots. But you know, the real history. Yeah. So that royal family today, no, they've got to do as they're told. They've no other choice. If they want to remain in a life of luxury, things like that. I mean, they can leave like Prince Harry did. Prince Harry buggered off, and I don't blame him. I don't. I mean, I don't think anybody in their right mind could actually live under a regime like that. You know, everything's scheduled. All the schedules are. They don't make their own schedules. Other people do that on behalf of the Conservative government. Even when Labour, even when there's a Labour government and down the street, still the royal family are controlled by the Conservatives in the background. It's not a Labour government that can do the fuck. They don't have any say over that. Even when they're a government, they don't have any say over the royal family. Only the Conservatives. Only because they were the ones that had the real royal family murdered. And if they can do that to their own royal family, I mean, let's face it, no wonder they bumped off 100 million Indians over, I don't know what that country was called at the time, what Indians called it. They've scrapped that name. Nobody's ever going to know what they called it. But it's called America today. Don't know what the Aborigines called their country when it was their country. But now it's called Australia by white people that took over. The Romans were the least violent. Them and the Greeks were more violent than the Romans, but the Romans were the least violent. They actually paid everybody. They didn't have slaves as such. They paid everybody money. Yeah, they actually paid people money. Whereas the British and the European colonisers did not pay anybody a red cent. Did the hell? No, everybody was a slave to them. And you got beaten up, you got tortured, everything like that. So yeah, the colonisers from Europe were the most violent as a whole, but the most violent out of them were obviously people call them the British, but yeah, they were because the Scottish and the Welsh and the Irish were mixed up in that, and they had them in the army. The soldiers had to do as they were ordered, and they done it with impunity anyway. So yeah, they were just as much to blame as the English were. But if it wasn't for the English, no, that would have happened. because it was all English ideas in the English Parliament in the first place. And they were only doing it for them. They weren't doing it for Scotland or for Wales. They were doing it for themselves because they had fuck all in their country. And they don't. They're half-wits. I mean, the people that actually that actually walked in there to take over, colonise, that what they call England today must have been real mugs. And they were. I mean, Jesus. I mean, nobody. I mean, this is what the English did. There was a bunch of people went over into England from Jamaica and the West Indies. And the best of it is England's got their own version of their own history. Their own fake version of it. They like people to believe that they're made up from lots of different white cultures from around Europe. Yeah, one Germanic culture went across and that was it. But apart from that, no. The West Indies and Jamaica, they were the ones that went over there and slaughtered the Saxons. Half of the Saxons got slaughtered by them. The Anglo-Saxons, and the other half of them died from the diseases that these people brought over that they weren't immune to because they never encountered them before. There are no Anglo-Saxons. There is no Anglo-Saxon blood in England today either. And that's why. And that's in real history. I mean, Jesus, I even learned that in primary school, for God's sake, just before the year before I went into high school. And we were taught all that anyway. So it's not like anybody's making it up, you know. It's there in history all over the fucking place. But, you know, there's nothing Roman about the English. And I mean, if they want to hang on to their ex-colonisers' identity, that's up to them, you know. Shows you how stupid they are. But yeah, they were the most violent and the biggest colonisers on the planet. Yeah. The least violent was the Romans, actually. They didn't torture people and things like that. They were too busy trying to be proud of their empire. The English, of course, were not proud of their empire. They didn't give two hoots what it looked like to the rest of the world. They didn't care about that. They just got on and had a great time with it. To them, they were having a great time. They were having a party, you know, torturing people and everything like that. And as I say, the Scottish and Welsh and Irish soldiers were mixed up in it too. They done it with impunity, so they were just as much to blame, but not quite as much to blame as the English, only because the English were the ones that made all these decisions in that Parliament in London. Without that, wouldn't have happened. And that's why they keep even until today. It's always the Germans, the Germans. Yeah, 8 million people, but they weren't all Jewish. The Zionists, and they are all Zionists, right? England was always Zionist. Way before Protestantism or the Anglican Church ever went anywhere, even touched the shores of England. They were the very first Zionists in the world. Christian Zionism, English Christian Zionism, not British. Before Britain, English. They don't like you talking like this. That's their problem. If they can't come to terms with their own history and admit the wrongs they did and all the rest of it, blah, 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 then that's their problem. That's why their countries are dumped today. because they can't come to terms with anything. Even though the Prime Minister at the moment was probably told that he's got no other choice but to back that, what's going on with Israel doing what they're doing in Gaza. He's probably been told as soon as, because I mean he had obviously probably, if he decided not to back them and came out with it and said, look, I'm not backing them, he would have to have resigned probably. They wouldn't have allowed him. The rest of it, the Zionists in England would not have allowed any British Prime Minister to stand up and categorically turn round and say, I don't support Israel. Because what I'm seeing, this is the thing, if that had to happen, just for argument's sake, it's never going to happen, then that Zionist project would be finished. It's more than just a project anyway now. It's been going on for too long. Yeah, that would be finished, and what would happen to the people who were born there? This is the problem, and this is the way Zionists set it up, so that, colonizers would go in, they would have children, their children would be brought up believing that they're Jewish. And they do. It's not their fault. And they're taught certain things in that education establishment over there about the Palestinians. And that's why you get so many Israelis hating on the Palestinians. They're brought up to believe what they get taught. The Palestinians are the invaders. And Israel's been there for thousands of years, which it hasn't. You look on any map at all, it predates in 1940s. Show me where Israel is on. Doesn't matter what it says in the Roman Catholic Bible. You show me any map that goes further back to 1700s, the 16, the 15, the 14, the 1500s, as far back as you want to go, and you show me Israel on it. No, it wasn't there. It's never existed until it was invented. Named after Azrael, the goddess of war. Azrael. Yeah, the goddess of war. That's what Azrael's named after. Azrael. Well, why I don't know, but they did. That's what it did. And they took the name Palestine off the map in 1962 and replaced it with Israel. As in Azrael, the goddess of war. And now look what's happening to Gaza. The goddess of war, It says it all really. You should Google that. Azrael. Yeah. So, the most violent and the biggest, the most successful empire, I hate to say it, was the English empire. They call it a British Empire. And in fact, it was British eventually anyway, once Scotland and England signed that stupid agreement. Yeah, so then with our flag and their flag put together, we made a lovely little Union Jack out of it. And it is, I must admit, I hate to say it, but it does look very good, that Union Jack. If it's spread across a little mini car or something like that, It do look something else. It does look something else. But no, that is what the Irish call a butcher's apron. It is. There's no doubts about that. Even if the English never invaded, if they never invaded Ireland, that would still be a butcher's apron, that flag today, because of all the murders and killings that's been done under that flag with America, Canada, Australia, and all the nonsense that went on over in India as well. Yeah. Then you get Argentina, you get France. I mean, England wasn't the only ones. Argentina, France, Brazil. Google Brazil. Yeah, Brazil. The majority of white Europe was involved in slavery. Some countries were not, but the majority of it was. But the worst, the most violent, and the most successful out of it was the English. I believe I can fly. Stupid humans walking past my window there. Yeah, so yeah, 100 million Red Indians. I don't know how much of anybody else got murdered. I don't know how many Africans got done under the British. I probably did look at that before, years ago or something. Probably a tonnage anyway, obviously. Probably not as much as 100 million, because the thing about the Africans, they didn't set out to actually bump off all the people in Africa in order to take over their country, to put settlers on it, to colonise it. That's not what Britain was doing, that's not what Europe was doing either. They were over there, partly colonised at the time, but it wasn't. If it was fully colonised, it would be like what's going on, in Palestine. That's fully colonised. That's going to be completely Israel in the end. It will be. Yeah. There won't be any Palestinians, just like there's very few Red Indians and very few Aborigines that never get spoken about. Yeah, and will never ever be president or prime minister in their own countries. As far as the white people are concerned, no, that's not your country. That's not your country. Look at you. No, this is our country. That's the way it is now. That's what happens when people allow other people to steal their country off them. The Aborigines, of course, and the Red Indians had weapons, but not good enough. They didn't have guns at the time, Yeah, gunpowder. You blame the Chinese for that one. They invented gunpowder. Yeah, Jesus Christ. Yeah, the Chinese invented explosives, and that's what it was, gunpowder. Yeah, fireworks and what have you. That's all they ever did. Other people, of course, utilised their gunpowder to make things like TNT, dynamite, things like that. But the Chinese only used gunpowder for peaceful means. They didn't go around blowing people up with it or anything like that, like everybody else does nowadays. Innocent civilians and what have you, and children. Everybody else does that nowadays. But Chinese, no. With all the technology they've got more technology than anybody else. They're more technological than anybody else in the world. You don't want to, you don't have to admit that if you don't want to admit. Nobody cares, right? What anybody thinks. They are the most technological in the world. You don't have to look at everything they've done over there in the space from the 1980s up until the present day. Look at all the endeavours that they've done over there. Look at all the bridge building they've done over there that nobody else in the world's ever been able to do. Longest bridges in the world. I think Taiwan's the one. Taiwan's the longest bridge in the world, actually. Yeah, Taiwan. In Taiwan managed that the longest bridge in the world, and yet the Americans, the British, the Europeans, they don't have a clue. They don't know how to do things like that. They're stupid. After all, they were colonisers, weren't they? That's why they were colonisers. True. And today, they're still supporting colonisation. You shouldn't be surprised. Their past tells you everything about them. They haven't changed. They haven't changed. That's why they don't like to allow immigrants into the EU and they have them come across the French Channel and the English Channel over at England. And even the English don't want them because they're just as racist anyway. Not the people, the government. The governments I'm talking about, not the bloody people. Some of the people are racist, of course, but most of them are not. And a lot of them do they don't mention it on the internet these days because there is a lot of English that have mentioned about limiting immigration, which I can see their point, but they were always called out as being racist, but they weren't. There's a difference between being a racist and saying, well, we can't have 1 million people every year coming out of our country. We can't afford that. That's natural for someone to come out with that, and it's probably true. It depends on how you utilise these people you're letting in. It's the thing. You've got to utilise them properly, so that you've got to make them citizens, and you've got to look after them properly, and everything else, and it pays off in the end when they become citizens and they become really good workers and pay a lot of taxes into the system. That's what benefits a country. It's all right for people to turn around and say, well, we can't have 10 million people over the next 5 years coming into our country. Why not? Make them all citizens, build them all houses, give them all really good quality jobs, with good quality wages. And if you don't have any good quality jobs or good quality wages, then you're an idiot as a Prime Minister. And obviously, you're a shit Prime Minister. Clearly. The buck always stops with the PM. It doesn't matter. You cannot. The English always pass the buck. They always do. They pass the buck on it. It's that minister's fault. They're responsible for it. This one's responsible. That's why they've got it set up like that. Why do you think they've got it set up like that? The excuse is, well, the Prime Minister can't do it all themselves. That's a cop out. That is a cop out. That's so that if someone does something wrong and it goes tits up, then the Prime Minister, oh, it was his fault, he did it. He's the one that's got to resign. But the Prime Minister doesn't resign. Yeah. It's always the same old bollocks. That's why you set up like that down south. Nobody in their right mind, no honest person would ever set a government up like that. Any government up like that. Every single government under our lifetimes all been set up like that. You've got one person responsible for the entirety of the education system in the country. One person. How many primary schools are there in England alone? and Wales, how many high schools are there? How many universities and colleges are there? That whole that comes into it too. That one person. That's garbage. There is no way on earth that one person can deal with all that. They don't deal with it. They just sit there nice and pretty and get paid every year. You know, get a yearly salary, and nothing happens. That's all they do. That's rubbish. That's not a government. That's just jobs for the boys, basically. That's all that is. Jobs for the boys. Doesn't matter whether it's the Tories or whether it's the Labour Party. It's always been. Doesn't matter who's in government there. It's always structured the same way, and it shouldn't be. All that structure should be scrapped. Of course it should. You should do things properly. You need more than one person to be an education minister for a start. You can't just have one education minister. You can't just have one housing minister either, or one transport minister that's got to deal with all the transport over the entirety of Great Britain. That one person. Piss off. Nah. Nobody in their right mind is going to turn around and say, well, that's the best idea I've ever heard, having one person as a transport minister or an education minister or a health minister. Health. National Health Service. Yeah. It's great, that, isn't it? The health secretary. And they get a cheek to walk about with a little NHS badge stuck to them. What the fuck? And most of them that's ever been a health secretary knew nothing about health and never been involved in health. Well, maybe they've got a few shares in some private health companies would be about it. Never been doctors, never been nurses, never been anything to do with NHS. But when they get appointed a health secretary, oh yeah, we'll run about a place with this little NHS badge that's up to their lapel, making out, look at me, I'm a health secretary. I know I've run about health. Yeah, that's why health services. That's why the health service is ruined as well in England. So we need more than one person, and the people that should be employed, not as one health secretary, but as like a little small administration of people, a board of just like a little board, say about 10 people, all retired, all the best qualified retired people. Give them jobs to oversee the entirety of England's health service. Take the managers out of all the hospitals. Yeah. You wouldn't be able to put it back to the way it was with matrons in charge again, because that's all gone now. That's forgotten. Nobody knows how to do that now. Those standards are gone forever. They're lost thanks to Tony Blair. Yeah. Nobody knows anything about it. Those standards are all fucking, they're gone. It's a pity that. Yeah. Yeah, England doesn't even have its own drinking water. Well, it does. It does. But its own drinking water is not owned by it. It's owned by every other country in the bloody world, bar England. Completely nuts. Anyway, I'm out of here.